Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to today's Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita Shloka recitation. We are going to recite chapters 4, 5 and 6 this week. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 4. Okay. 4.1 Sri Bhagavanuvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manur Ikshvakave Bravit. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. 4.2 Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakale nehamahata yogo nashtah parantapa. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. 4.3 Sa evayam maya tedya yogah proktah puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hyetaduttamam. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. 4.5 Sri Bhagavanuvacha Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava charjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam vetha parantapa. The personality of Godhead said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. 4.6 Ajopi san avyayatma भूतानामीश्वरोऽपि सन् प्रकृतिं स्वामधिष्ठाय सम्भवाम्यात्ममायया. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. 4.7 यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. 4.8 परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. 4.9 जन्म कर्म च मे दिव्यम् एवं यो वेत्ति तत्त्वतः त्यक्त्वा देहं पुनर्जन्म नैति मामेति सोऽर्जुन. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. 4.10 वीतरागभयक्रोधा मन्मया मामुपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः. Being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. 4.11 ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते तांस्तथैव भजाम्यहम् मम वर्त्मानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्याः पार्थ सर्वशः. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. 4.13 चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्मा विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्य कर्तारमव्ययम्. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. 434 तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. 435 यज्ञात्वा नेह भूयोऽन्यज् ज्ञातव्यम् अवशिष्यते. Sorry. यज्ञात्वा नेह भूय Sorry, I'm saying another shloka. यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डवा येन भूतान्यशेषानि द्रक्ष्यस्यात्मन्यथो मयि. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. 436. अपि चेदसि पापेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः पापकृत्तमः सर्वं ज्ञानप्लवेनैव वृजिनं सन्तरिष्यसि. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. 438 Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsiddhaha kalenatmani vindati. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. 440. अज्ञश्च श्रद्दधानश्च संशयात्मा विनश्यति नायं लोकोऽस्ति न परो न सुखं संशयात्मनः. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. 442. तस्माद् अज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः चित्वैनं संशयं योगम् आत्तिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. Chapter 5, 5.2. Are we going to recite 5.1 or just do 5.2? 5.2. We learned 5.1 also, but it's not here. I'll have to share it. Anyway, let's just do 5.2. Sri Bhagavanuvacha Sannyasaha Karma Yogascha Nishreyasa Karavubhau Tayostu Karma Sannyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. 5.6. Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkham aptum ayogataha yogayukto munir brahma nachirena gacchati. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. 5.7. योगयुक्तो विशुद्धात्मा विजितात्मा जितेन्द्रियः सर्वभूतात्मभूतात्मा कुर्वन्नपि न लिप्यते. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. 5.10. ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि संगं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन padmapatrам mivambhasa. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. 5.16. ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानं येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवत् ज्ञानं prakashayati tatparam. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. 5.18. विद्या विनय संपन्ने ब्राह्मणे गविहस्तिनि शुनि चैवाश्वपाके च पंडिता समदर्शिनः. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater outcast. 5.20. न प्रहृष्येत् प्रियं प्राप्य नोद्विजेत् प्राप्य च प्रियं स्थिरबुद्धिरसम्मूढो ब्रह्मविद् ब्रह्मणि स्थितः. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence. 5.22. ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. 524. योऽन्तः सुखोऽन्तरारामस् तथान्तर्ज्योतिरेव यः स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ब्रह्मभूतोऽधिगच्छति. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. 529. भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसां सर्वलोकामहेश्वरं सुहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमृच्छति. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Okay. So chapter 6, 6.1. श्रीभगवानुवाच अनाश्रितः कर्मफलं कार्यं कर्म करोति यः स सन्न्यासी च योगी च न निरग्निर्न चाक्रियः. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated and is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. 6.5. Uddharedatmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmanaha. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. 6.6. बन्धुरात्मात्मनस्तस्य येनात्मैवात्मना जितः अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे वर्तेतात्मैव शत्रुवत्. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. 6.7. जितात्मनः प्रशान्तस्य परमात्मा समाहितः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु तथा मानापमानयोः. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. 6.8. ज्ञानविज्ञानतृप्तात्मा कूटस्थो विजितेन्द्रियः युक्त इत्युच्यते योगी समलोष्टाश्मकाञ्चनः. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-control. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. 6.16. नात्यश्नतस्तु योगोऽस्ति न चैकान्तम् अनश्नतः न चाति स्वप्नशीलस्य जाग्रतो नैव चार्जुना. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. 6.17. युक्ताहारविहारस्य युक्तचेष्टस्य कर्मसु युक्तस्वप्नावबोधस्य योगो भवति दुःखः. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pangs by practicing the yoga system. 6.19. यथा दीपो निवातस्थो Nengate sopama smrita yogino yata chittasya yunjato yogamatmanaha. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. 620 to 23. Yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyan atmani tushyati sukham atyantikam yattad buddhigrahyam atindriyam vetti yatra na chaivayam स्थितश्चलति तत्त्वतः यं लब्ध्वा चापरं लाभं मन्यते नाधिकं ततः यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते तं विद्यात् दुःखसंयोग वियोगं योगसंज्ञितम्. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. 624 सनिश्चयेन योक्तव्यो योगो निर्विण्णचेतसा संकल्प प्रभवान् कामांस् त्यक्त्वा सर्वान् शेषतः मनसैवेन्द्रियग्रामं विनियम्य समन्ततः. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon without exception all material desires born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. 626 यतो यतो निश्चलति मनश्चञ्चलमस्थिरं ततस्ततो नियम्यैतद् आत्मन्येवावशं नयेत्. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. 627 प्रशान्तमनसंह्येनं योगिनं सुखमुत्तमम् उपैति शान्तरजसं ब्रह्मभूतम् अकल्मषम्. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. 629 सर्वभूतस्थमात्मानं सर्वभूतानि चात्मनि ईक्षते योगयुक्तात्मा सर्वत्र समदर्शनः. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. 630 यो मां पश्यति सर्वत्र सर्वं च मयि पश्यति तस्याहं न प्रणश्यामि स च मे न प्रणश्यति. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. 634 चञ्चलं हि मनः कृष्ण प्रमाथि बलवदृढं तस्याहं निग्रहं मन्ये पायोरिवासु दुष्करम्. For the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. 635 श्रीभगवानुवाच असंशयं महाबाहो mano durnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. Lord Sri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. 640. श्रीभगवानुवाच पार्थनैवेह नामुत्रा विनाशस्तस्य विद्यते न हि कल्याणकृत् कश्चित् दुर्गतिं तात गच्छति. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Son of Pritha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction in, either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. 641. Prapya punyakritam lokan ushitva shashwati samaha shuchinam srimatam gehe yoga bhrashto vijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many births of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. 642. अथवा योगिनामेव कुले भवति धीमताम् एतद्धि दुर्लभतरं लोके जन्म यदीदृशम्. Or if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. 643. Tatra tam buddhi samyogam labhate paurvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuyaha samsiddhau para kurunandana. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kunti. 644. पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव क्रियते ह्यवशोऽपि सः जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते. By virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. 645. प्रयत्नाद्यतमानस्तु योगी संशुद्ध किल्बिषः अनेकजन्म संसिद्धस् ततो याति param gatim. And when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal. 647. Yoginamapi sarvesham madgatenantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo mataha. But of all yogis, the one with great faith and who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So that is the end of 3 chapters, 4, 5, 6. And it took us almost half an hour. So that's our time also, half an hour. So let's read Mahabharata. Okay, who wants to tell me some points from what we read yesterday? Yes, Madhava.
The dice game.
The dice game. What about the dice game?
Sakuni cheated and took off the Pandavas' wealth.
Okay. Shakuni cheated and took all the Pandavas' wealth. Rasapriya.
After the Raja sacrifice, Duryodhana and Sakuni decided to stay in the Mayasabha to examine it. And then Duryodhana falls in the water.
Actually, even Krishna also stayed, isn't it? He sent his family back and Krishna stayed because Yudhishthira Maharaj begged him, please stay back. And what did Krishna do after staying back? And then he left. What happened? Hmm. Well, Krishna was even there when Duryodhana was insulted, right? But something happened. Anyway, we'll go back and check. And what else? We finished the Rajasuya Yagya. And this is where Duryodhana's envy. So first of all, for the Rajasuya Yagya, after the Rajasuya Yagya was completed, the kings were leaving, right? We saw after the Rajasuya Yagya, Shishupal was killed because in the Agra Puja, Shishupal was blaspheming Krishna like anything. And then the kings left. And Krishna also wanted to leave, but Yudhishthira Maharaj requested that he stay back. Duryodhana also stayed back because he wanted to see the Maya Sabha and all that, so he stayed back. So first we actually talked about Duryodhana only. So he went around, he saw the Maya Sabha and he was burning with jealousy. How much wealth they have and the beautiful ladies, right? And everything. He just couldn't tolerate it. And on top of that, wherever he went in the Maya Sabha, he would make mistakes. He would hit again. He would think that a door is open, right? Because it was made in such a way, it was actually not a door, but it appeared like a door. And he would just walk full speed and then he would go and bang his head against the wall. And the maids and servants, they would say, "Oh, Prince, please don't go there. It's the door. It's not a door. It's just a wall." And he would think that they're actually making fun of him, so he would just go anywhere and he would bang his head, and they would kind of try to, stop their laughter. So he was just getting humiliated, insulted. Finally, right? Actually, first he went and he fell in the water, a pond which actually looked like the floor, marble floor. And even after being warned by the servants not to go there, he thought they were they were joking with him. He just walked straight ahead and he fell in the water. And from the balcony upstairs, on the second, third floors, the Pandavas were watching, so they laughed heartily. And Duryodhana was completely embarrassed seeing he dragged himself out of the water. And seeing this, Yudhishthira Maharaj stopped them from laughing. Krishna was also there. He simply smiled. And Duryodhana Yudhishthira Maharaj arranged for dry clothes for Duryodhana. And he just pretended like he tried very hard to pretend like everything was okay, but he was just completely burning with humiliation and jealousy. And he, just so that he would look normal, he went around looking further. Again, he made some mistakes. And finally, he left. And Yudhishthir Maharaj was kind of pacifying him, and he just laughed, right? Like pretending like everything was okay. So that's what happened. And then Krishna also decided to go, but Yudhishthir Maharaj requested, "You please stay." So he sent his family members. No, after this, Krishna left. So the family members had left before, right after Rajasuya. Krishna stayed back for some more time. So he was present for this time when Duryodhana, you know, fell in the water and all that. And after this, Krishna left. Then Duryodhana also left. Vyasdev remained. Yeah. And then Vyasdev told him that there would be. So he asked Vyasdev if this Rajasuya Yagya was a success or not. And then Vyasdev said, okay. So Vyasdev said, it was a success, and for 13 years you'll rule very nicely, but after that there's going to be a war. So then Yudhishthira Maharaj took a vow after hearing this. What will lead to war? When there is disagreement, when there is disagreement. So he decided he will treat others' children also like his own children. He will be equal to everyone. The other thing was he will never disobey his elders. Whatever the elders said, he will do. Why he took this vow? So that he will not trigger, right, any uncomfortable dealings which may lead to war. Vyasdev had already foretold that he would be the cause of a war in which all the Kshatriyas, most of the Kshatriyas of the planet will be killed. So therefore he wanted to avoid that, so he took this vow. Anyway, Vyasdev left, and then I think we discuss about what happened to Duryodhana on the way back. He was just, seeing his situation, Shakuni asked what was wrong. So it was understood, right? He wanted revenge, right? He wanted all the wealth of the Pandavas, and he wanted to humiliate them because he himself felt humiliated. So then his main problem was seeing the opulence of the Pandavas, seeing their success. How many kings were still coming? Duryodhana's service was to collect all the gifts that were brought by the kings. So when he saw all the gifts, he was thinking, my God, so much wealth, so much opulence. So he couldn't tolerate. So he wanted that. He wanted what the Pandavas had. That was the thing. So then Shakuni said, don't worry, I will give you all that wealth. How? So we'll fight and this and that. And he said, you have Bhishma. No, he said, why you're so worried? You have on your side such warriors like Bhishma, Drona, and all that. You enjoy what you have. No, and he actually said, you have such powerful warriors. Why should you fear? Why should you fear anyone? You can get all that wealth. You have such. So he thought, oh, we'll go and fight and then we will take all that wealth. And then Shakuni said, no, it's not always through fight that you can win. And then he showed his dice. So he had a plan. So he said, you go back, you tell your father to invite Yudhishthira Maharaj to come and play the dice game, and I'm going to defeat him in that game. And he is such a gambler. Like, he likes to play the dice game, although he's not expert at it. So if with a little provocation, he will immediately come, right, to play. And then I'm going to defeat him and I'll get all his wealth for you and you can enjoy. Duryodhana was very happy. They went back, and then Shakuni goes to Dhrtarastra Maharaj and says, Maharaj, your son is very unhappy. Dhritarashtra, being attached to his son, he said, what happened, Duryodhana? You went to that Rajasuya Yagya. Why are you sad? What happened? And then Duryodhana said how, they were in such opulence, so much wealth. I cannot live in peace. And then also how he felt insulted when he fell in the water. So Dhritarashtra said, no, you should be happy with what you have. And, Yudhishthira is actually your well-wisher and this and that. He said, no, we should have a dice game. This is the plan. So Dhritarashtra said, let me consult with Vidur, then I'll tell you. And then when he consulted with Vidur, immediately Vidur understood what was the intention. They wanted to take away the wealth of Yudhishthira. So he didn't agree. He said, no, my dear king, this is not right. It's not approved. Besides gambling, it's a vice. It will lead to fights. It will lead to a war. And then it will be the cause of destruction of your entire race. Don't do this, right? But Dhritarashtra didn't say anything. He kept quiet. And then Vidur left. Dhritarashtra then started thinking about what Vidur said, and he kind of agreed what he said. It's true, gambling is not good. So then he tried to convince Duryodhana. Nothing doing. Duryodhana said, no, if I cannot get their wealth, then I'm going to kill myself. So then Dhritarashtra said, okay, I know I don't agree with you, but You go ahead with what you want to do. And then their plan was they will build a nice hall, a magnificent hall, for gambling. And then they will invite the Pandavas to come to play, like that. And the construction started. And he told Vidur also. Vidur tried to convince him one more time. When the hall was ready, Dhritarashtra said, now you go and invite Yudhishthir to the gambling match. Tell them that I'm calling them. And then Vidur, once again, he tried to convince Dhritarashtra Maharaj not to do. Dhritarashtra Maharaj said, no, I have already made up my mind. Besides, whatever is meant to happen will happen. That is destiny. What can we do? Like that. So Vidur was sent. Vidur arrived at Yudhishthir Maharaj's place, and Yudhishthir Maharaj could see that Vidur is already, I'm sorry, that he's not, he's something's on his mind. He's not happy. So he asked, what is troubling you? And then he said, the king has sent me to invite you to a gambling match. They want to play. And also, gambling match, who's going to play? Shakuni is going to play, and Duryodhana is going to stake. Shakuni is going to play. So immediately, Yudhishthir Maharaj understood the whole plan. And he told Vidur, but gambling is not good. It's the root cause of all misery. Then, but this is an order coming from a superior, from Dhritarashtra Maharaj. He's the older brother of my father. How can I, go against his order? What should I do? You tell me what I should do. Like that. Then he felt obliged. What did Vidur say? He said, you tell me what I should do. I think Vidur says, no, you shouldn't do it. Let me check. Yeah, he says, I have no desire to gamble. But see, Yudhishthira Maharaj never goes against dharma. He will only do what is right according to dharma. So I don't have a desire, but if I'm challenged, then it, as a Kshatriya's duty, I have to accept it, like that. And then this is the order coming from a superior, Dhritarashtra Maharaj. I cannot disobey the superior because I have taken a vow that I will not disobey my superior. So under the circumstances, looks like this is arranged by providence, my going there, losing wealth, everything, right? So I'll just have to do like that. So they left. I'm just trying to see what Vidur says. Yeah. I remember him asking Vidur, what do you think I should do? Yeah. Vidur said, yeah, I tried to dissuade Dhritarashtra, but yeah, what do you think I should do? Here. See? So first Yudhishthir said that this is not right, gambling is not good, but the order is coming from a superior. What do you think I should do, Vidura? And Vidura is, yes, it is not right, it is the cause of all misery. Therefore, I tried to persuade Dhritarashtra, right, into not going for this gambling. But he didn't hear me. Therefore, he has sent me to you. And then he said, how Duryodhana wants it and Shakuni will play on his behalf and the king has granted and he wants you to come. Yeah, he didn't say anything he didn't advise Yudhishthir what he should do. He just put the situation in front of him. This is what is happening. He has sent me to invite you. And Yudhishthir Maharaj understood. This is providence. What can be done? So he agreed. And the very next day, along with his brothers and Draupadi, they went to Hastinapur. And then they were received and all that, right? The ladies were taken into the ladies' quarters, and the ladies of Hastinapur were feeling quite jealous of the opulence and the beauty of the ladies of even Subhadra Devi was there. So seeing their opulence, they were feeling envious. Anyway, so then after they had their evening, they had some entertainment and food and everything. They rested for the night, and the next day is the gambling match. So before the Pandavas went, so many kings were invited from all over the world. They all sat there, and at the head was Dhritarashtra Maharaj. Shakuni and Duryodhana were waiting for the Pandavas to come. And when the Pandavas came in, Yeah. So they were brought to the assembly hall, and they had music and everything. Who started it first? Yeah, Shakuni is the one. Shakuni said, "We have been waiting for you, O king. The hall is full and we are eager to play dice." Like that. Shakuni is the one who said, "Please come, we are waiting." Yudhishthir Maharaj tried to dissuade them that gambling is not good, and it's. And Shakuni was like, "Are you afraid of playing with us? This is just, we are not trying to cheat anyone. We are just trying to play. It's just a friendly match, right?" And then Yudhishthir Maharaj gave reasons why one should not play. Anyway, Shakuni, he was bent upon that. So he said, one point that Yudhishthir Maharaj said was that why does one gamble? You gamble. What is the whole purpose of gambling? You want to gain wealth easily, isn't it? That's the whole purpose why one will gamble. So you want to gamble to take my wealth, Shakuni or Duryodhan. But my wealth is meant for serving Brahmanas. You should not try to take my wealth because that wealth is going to be used in Brahmana's service. Therefore, you should not desire to gamble with me. First reason. And why should I gamble? I don't have any desire to earn any more wealth. I am completely satisfied with what I have. Then why should I gamble? What is the reason for me to gamble? So, in that case, both of us shouldn't be gambling. Again, Shakuni says, of course, when you gamble, you will be gambling to get something, but looks like you are afraid of playing with me. If that is the case, then don't play. So anyway, Yudhishthir Maharaj was again and again, he kept looking up to the elders so that someone, because he's giving reasons, but he has to be supported by the elders. He's not the emperor there, right? He's sitting there as a guest, and there the head was Dhrtarastra Maharaj, being the head of the family. Bhishmadev was there, Dronacharya as the guru was there. Nobody was saying anything. So again and again, he kept looking up at Dhritarashtra Maharaj, Dronacharya, Bhishmadev. Nobody was saying anything. Finally, he understood. Okay, if I'm a Kshatriya, as I'm challenged, I have to play. Then he said, so who's going to play with me? Is it Shakuni or Duryodhana? He says, no, Duryodhana will stake because Shakuni doesn't have enough wealth to match Yudhishthir Maharaj's wealth. When you play in gambling, whatever one person stakes, the other person should be able to match that. That's when they can play. Shakuni didn't have that kind of wealth. So then, if Yudhishthir played with Duryodhana, who had the wealth, Duryodhana was not so good at gambling. He would be lost. So Shakuni says, I will play the game and Duryodhana will stake. He'll put the wealth. Again, this was against the rules of gambling. Yudhishthir Maharaj, how is this? This is not the rule. You cannot do this. Again, he looked at the elders. Nobody said anything. So it was obvious, right? So he said, let's start. And the gambling started. And one after another, Yudhishthir Maharaj lost everything. Every time when Yudhishthir Maharaj would stake something, Duryodhan will say that is matched. And exactly what number they wanted to win that, Shakuni would say, and as if commanded, right, the dice would just fall, would give the say exact number that Shakuni wanted, and all the wealth that Yudhishthir Maharaj staked, including finally his kingdom, everything was lost. But then he was thinking each time, oh, if I just, this time if I played, maybe there is a chance that I'll get back whatever I have lost. That's the thing with gambling. There is always, this is Maya, this is illusion, that you always feel that maybe this time I have lost, but maybe this time it'll work out. There is happiness here. That's Maya, right? Actually, there's no happiness. That, like the desert mirage, thinking that there is some water, I will quench my thirst just little bit more, like that. So Yudhishthir Maharaj was thinking after all was lost, and finally he started staking his brothers, right? They thought everything is over, and Yudhishthir Maharaj says, Nakul, I stake Nakul, right? Thinking that, oh, by this maybe I'll get back. Nakul was lost. Then Sahadev was lost. And Shakuni says, oh, because they're your step brothers. Looks like they're not as dear to you as Arjun and Bhimsen. That's why you stake them. Yudhishthira Maharaj became very angry. Don't try to create disunity amongst us brothers. And then Shakuni thought, oh, if he gets angry, then this game will stop here. So he said, sorry. You know, in the excitement of gambling, sometimes people say all types of things which they don't mean, which they wouldn't say otherwise. Forgive me. And let's continue. Arjun was staked. Arjun was lost. Bhimsen was staked. He was also lost. And now he's literally sweating, Yudhishthira Maharaj, and he's thinking, my only chance. And he staked himself also, finally. And the result was, he was also lost. Now everything is lost, he's thinking. And then Shakuni says, no, you have not lost everything. You still have one. You have beautiful Draupadi. And again, Yudhishthira Maharaj is thinking, you know, that maybe because of Draupadi, I'll be able to get everyone back. So he staked Draupadi also. And when he said that, actually once in the middle, Vidur just got up and he said, I told you, Maharaj, to kill this Duryodhana when he was born. You didn't listen to me that day. He is going to be the cause of the destruction of your entire race. Get him killed right now. Like that. And Duryodhana he said, see how ungrateful he is. He's he's being maintained by us and he supports the enemy. He's like a prostitute, right? An unchaste wife being maintained by the husband. She's thinking of the welfare of someone else, like that. So then Vidur looked and he said, you know, actually, I'm not a fool. Fool is that person who cannot recognize the good advice that is given by me. He's a real fool. Anyway, so nobody paid attention to what Vidur said. And then Draupadi was also lost. All the kings that were present, they were like, they couldn't take it. They were like, five, what is this, right? But Dhritarashtra Maharaj had to say something. And finally, when Draupadi was staked, and when Shakuni said a number, Dhritarashtra is getting excited and he's asking Vidur, what happened? Is she won? Is she won? Like a small child getting excited in a game, he was getting excited. Did they win everything? Like that. Vidur was disgusted when he saw the king's excitement here. So now Draupadi is also lost completely. The wealth, all five of them became slaves, and Draupadi is also lost. As if that was not enough, Duryodhana says, oh, bring that lady here into the assembly. Let her, no, he says, let her go and sweep all the, sweep the house and live in the servant quarter, like that. And that's where I think we ended. So, he told Vidur to go and bring her first. That's right. Yeah. Duryodhana turned to Vidur and he said, come, O Khatwa, bring Draupadi. The Pandavas, dear, I'll just read from here, so it'll be a continuation into the next chapter. Come, O Khatwa, bring Draupadi, the Pandavas' dear wife. Let her be forced to sweep the chambers. Let the unfortunate woman now live with the serving maids. Vidur retorted, O wicked man, you do not see that by such words you are tying a noose around your neck. Do you not realize that being but a deer, you are provoking the anger of so many tigers? You have placed on your head 5 venomous snakes. Do not agitate them further, or you will soon go to Yamaraja's abode. Vidur looked around the assembly as he continued. Draupadi cannot be considered a slave because Yudhishthira lost her after losing himself. He was therefore not in a position to stake the princess. So even from Dharma's point of view, he didn't have a right to stake Draupadi after losing himself. He became a slave already. What power does he have on anyone or anything else after he becomes a slave? So he could not stake. It's not right. Like the bamboo which bears fruit on the point of death, this foolish Duryodhana wins treasure at dice. So the bamboo, just before dying, there are plants that do that. Just before giving up their life, for one last time, they produce so many flowers and then they just die. Flowers and fruits, and then they just die. What is the use of that producing so much fruit? They're going to die anyway. Like that, Duryodhana is gaining so much treasure. What's the use of all that treasure? He's going to die because he is invoking the anger of the Pandavas. Completely intoxicated, he does not see the terrors that this game will bring. So Vidur went before Dhritarashtra. You should check your son now, O king. Only low-class men utter painful words which offend others. Kunti's sons never use the kind of harsh speech in which Duryodhana indulges. His behavior is condemned by those who are learned. Stones may float and boats may sink, but this foolish prince will never heed good advice. He does not see that dishonesty is one of the fearful gates to hell, through which he is leading his brothers and the entire Kuru race. He will certainly be the cause of our destruction. Duryodhana laughed. Fie on Khatwa, he sneered. Looking around, he saw the chief servant of the palace and he called out to him, Pratikamin, bring Draupadi here. You have nothing to fear from the Pandavas. It is only Vidura who raves in fear. The Pandavas sat with their heads bowed. In the presence of Dhritarashtra, Bhishma, and Drona, Yudhisthira remained silent, as they had done. He was stupefied with sorrow. His attachment for gambling had brought about utter ruination. Now, before everyone's eyes, the chaste Draupadi was about to be humiliated. Yet what could he do? With the sole exception of Vidur, his elders were saying nothing. If they, and especially Dhritarashtra, approved of Duryodhana's acts, then he was helpless. He had never transgressed their orders. To him, his superiors were as good as God. He accepted their commands as coming directly from the Supreme Lord. Yeah, another thing is when he was playing, at every step, he was remembering Krishna. Yudhishthira Maharaj was remembering Krishna, especially when he was taking his brothers and even Draupadi. He was thinking, if only Krishna could be here, he could save me. And then because nobody else, especially the elders, right? Nobody was saying anything. He accepted that this must be ordained, right? This must be ordained by providence. Maybe this is meant to happen, and he was just, you know, entering into it. So to him, his superiors were as good as God. He accepted their commands as coming directly from the Supreme Lord. The terrible events unfolding must somehow be the Lord's arrangement. Seeing Yudhishthir sitting silently, his brothers also remained passive. The same mood, right? Because Yudhishthir is, although they were ready to go and, kill Duryodhana and his supporters, but without the order of Yudhishthir Maharaj, they couldn't do anything. So they also remained passive, although they yearned to stop Duryodhana from his intention to insult Draupadi. So that leads to today's chapter, chapter 20, Draupadi dragged to the assembly. The pratikamin went quickly to the ladies' chambers. Standing before Draupadi, he said in a trembling voice, O queen, maddened by dice, your husband has lost you to Duryodhana. I mean, would it make any sense to Draupadi? So the servant comes and says, maddened by dice, your husband has lost you to Duryodhana. Therefore, come with me to Dhritarashtra's assembly, where you will be engaged in some menial work. Draupadi, she's the queen of the emperor, stood up swiftly and dismissed the maid who had been tending her hair. Surprised, she said, O pratikamin, how can this be true? Who would stake his own wife in a gambling match? Surely the king was intoxicated. Could he find nothing else to stake? When he had already lost all his wealth, including his brothers and even himself, he staked you, O blessed princess. Draupadi became angry. Go back to the hall, Pratikamin, and ask that gambler who has lost even himself if he was still my lord when I was staked, right? Was he still my lord? Because when you lose yourself, you're not anyone's lord. You're a slave. So go and ask that gambler who has lost even himself if he was still my lord when I was staked. When I know the answer to this, I shall go with a sorrowful heart. The servant assented to Draupadi's request and returned to the hall. Seeing him return alone, Duryodhana yelled, "Where now is the Panchala princess, foolish man?" "She has sent me back with a question, O king," the pratikamin replied. "Draupadi has asked whose lord Yudhisthira was when he staked her in the game. Did he lose himself first or her?" Yudhisthira said nothing. He shook his head from side to side, seeming as if demented or deprived of his reason. He didn't have an answer. Duryodhana smiled slightly. "Let Draupadi come here and ask her question directly to Yudhisthira. We shall all hear his reply." The pratikamin again left the hall. Tears fell from his eyes as he approached Draupadi's room for the second time. He stood before the queen, unable to speak. She asked him what Yudhisthira had said in reply. With difficulty, the servant said, "O princess, the assembly is summoning you. It seems the destruction of the Kurus is close at hand. When the weak-brained Duryodhana wishes to take you before the assembly, he will surely no longer be able to protect his prosperity." Draupadi looked with compassion upon the distressed servant. He who is the great ordainer of the world has ordained this without doubt. Happiness and misery come in turn to both the wise and the unwise. Morality is said, however, to be the highest object in this world. If we preserve morality, it will pour blessings upon us. It is said, there is a statement like when you protect dharma, dharma protects you. That's why we should always live by dharma. So if we preserve morality, it will pour blessings upon us. Let not that morality now abandon the Kurus. Go back, O Suta, and speak these words to the virtuous Kuru elders. I am ready to obey whatever command those moral-minded men may give, for they are conversant with all the precepts of virtue. The servant folded his palms and bowed his head. He turned and left the queen's chamber and went again to the hall. Standing before Dhrtarastra, he repeated Draupadi's words. No one replied. Seeing now Duryodhana's eagerness and Dhritarashtra's complicity, they all sat with downcast faces. Dhritarashtra didn't say anything. And Duryodhana is very eager to bring her into the assembly hall. Yudhishthira then said to the servant, "Go to the bitterly weeping Panchali and tell her that she should appear here, even though she is in seclusion and attired in only a single cloth. This is Duryodhana's command." The Pandavas looked up at the Kuru elders, who, even after hearing Yudhishthir's words, all remained silent. Yeah, she's in seclusion and attired in single cloth means she was in her menstrual period. So ladies don't come out at that time. So when Yudhishthir said that, it was obvious to everyone that she cannot come. But even after hearing that, all the Kuru elders remained silent. The brothers could not determine what to do. They were ready to challenge Duryodhana and his 100 brothers to a fight. But seeing Yudhishthir still silent, they did not move. Bhima, however, could barely contain himself, and Arjun, breathing like a serpent, seemed to be on fire. Duryodhana laughed, enjoying every moment of his victory. He again addressed the pratikamin. Go, O Suta, and fetch the princess. She now has Yudhishthir's order. The servant looked perplexed. He was always obedient to Duryodhana, but he feared Draupadi's anger. He spoke hesitantly. What shall I say to the queen for a third time? Duryodhana snorted angrily. He turned to Dushasana. Oh brother, this foolish servant is afraid of Bhima. Go and bring Draupadi here. What can the Pandavas do now that they have become dependent on our will? Dushasana immediately rose and went straight to Draupadi like a dog entering a lion's den. He said, Oh, come, O princess, we have won you honestly. Cast aside your modesty and go before your new master, Duryodhana. O beautiful lady, now you must accept the Kauravas as your lords. Draupadi stood up, weeping loudly. She covered her pale face with her hands and ran toward Gandhari's chambers. Dushasana roared in anger and ran after her. He grabbed hold of her long wavy hair and forcibly pulled her along with him. As he dragged Draupadi by her bluish locks, the shameless prince recalled how that same hair had been sprinkled with the sanctified water of the Rajasuya. Ignoring her plaintive cries, he pulled her out into the palace passageways. Draupadi spoke to him in a low voice. O rude one, O wretch, you should not take me before the assembly. How can I appear there in my present condition, dressed only in a single cloth? Dushasana laughed. It does not matter, O Panchali, whether you are attired in one cloth or naked. We have won you, and you must now live among our servant women as best you can. The Kaurava then dragged the wailing Draupadi into the assembly hall. She prayed piteously to Krishna and Arjun. Dushasana threw her before Duryodhana, where she fell with her cloth in disarray and her hair dishevelled. The Kuru elders could hardly look at her. Bhishma, Drona, and Vidura were unable to maintain their composure, and they wept openly. Dhrtarastra said, What is happening now? Is the Panchala princess here? Then Draupadi rose up like a flame and addressed the assembly in an angry voice. All the persons in this assembly are learned in the scriptures and devoted to sacrifice. Some are my elders and gurus. How can I stand before them in this state? The high-souled son of Dharma is bound by the subtle rules of morality. Only those with clear vision can understand those rules. I am therefore unable to admit even an atom of fault in my husband. Draupadi looked toward Dhritarashtra, her eyes filled with tears. By his side she saw Bhishma, Drona, and Vidur, their faces torn by anguish. Everyone remained silent as she continued to reprimand them. How do you all say nothing as this wretch drags me into the hall? Surely then you are all of the same mind. Shame on you. The Kuru's high morality has been destroyed by this act. Drona, Bhishma, Katwa, and the king have lost their greatness, for none of them condemned this most vile deed. Draupadi fell to the floor of the hall, crying in helplessness and distress. The slender-waisted princess glanced at her enraged husbands. They were incensed to see her in such a state, and her glance inflamed them even more. Even the loss of their kingdom and wealth did not pain them as much as Draupadi's glance, which was full of modesty and anger. When Dushasana saw Draupadi look at her husbands, however, he again dragged her toward the Kurus. Slave, slave, he shouted. Duryodhana, Karna, and Shakuni all applauded Dushasana and laughed along with him. Apart from those three, everyone else in the hall was afflicted with sorrow to see the princess treated in this way. Shaking his head, Bhishma fought back tears and said to Draupadi, O blessed lady, knowing that One who has no wealth of his own cannot stake that belongs to others, but knowing also that wives are always at the command of their husbands, I am unable to answer the point you raised. So, what was Draupadi's question? If Yudhishthir was lost already, how he could stake his wife? So, Bhishma Dev is answering that. Answering means he's saying, I don't know the answer. Knowing that one who has no wealth of his own cannot stake that belonging to others. He cannot stake. But also, one's wife is always at one's command. Even if he becomes a slave, his wife is also his. Right? So I'm unable to answer the point you raised. The ways of morality are subtle. Yudhishthir can abandon the whole world full of wealth, but he will never sacrifice morality. The Pandava played with Shakuni, even though he knew that no one could defeat him at dice. He has staked and lost both himself and you, O princess. Therefore, I am confused upon this matter. Bhishma looked up at Dhritarashtra, but the king remained ever silent. Draupadi spoke again. Yudhishthir was summoned to this assembly by the king, and although he does not possess skill at dice, he was made to play with a skillful, wicked, and deceitful gambler. How then can he be said to have staked anything voluntarily? He has been deprived of his senses by the contrivances of sinful men acting together. This act lacks all propriety and will be condemned by all wise men. Here in this hall are many leaders of the Bharata race. Let them reflect on my words and answer my question. Dushasana began to harshly insult Draupadi. She wept grievously and looked toward her helpless husbands. Bhima was afflicted beyond all endurance. Finally, giving vent to his anger, he said to Yudhishthir, gamblers have in their houses many loose women, but they never stake even those women at dice. They always remain kind toward them. You have staked and lost all of our gems, jewels, gold, armors, animals, weapons, and whatever other wealth possessed, including our very selves. Even at this, my anger was not excited. But I consider your gambling with Draupadi abominable. Having obtained us as her husbands, this innocent girl does not deserve to suffer in this way. Only because of you is she now being persecuted by these low, despicable, cruel, and mean minded Kurus. Although you are my lord, I can hardly control my anger toward you. Bhima turned his massive shoulders toward the twins. I shall burn Yudhishthir's hands. Sahadev, bring fire. Arjun quickly caught hold of his brother. Oh, Bhima, do not speak in this way. You have never uttered such words before. Your morality has certainly been destroyed by these cruel foes. Do not fulfill your enemy's wishes. Practice the highest virtue and remain obedient to your elder brother. Remembering a Kshatriya's duties, he has played today only on the king's command and again against his own desire. Such an act will surely make him famous. That means Yudhishthira Maharaj didn't do it on his own, with his own desire. He did it obeying a superior for the sake of dharma. Bhima calmed himself. Checked by Arjun's reproach, he felt ashamed. You are right, O Dhananjaya. Our brother has surely acted in accordance with duty. Had I not known this, I would long ago have snatched his arms and burnt them in a blazing fire. Both brothers looked at Yudhishthir in his distress. They knew he felt obliged by the presence of Dhritarashtra and Bhishma. If these two elders did not speak out against what was happening, then Yudhishthir would not object to the proceedings. Duryodhana's hearty laughter rang out again. He was relishing his cousin's discomfort. He was especially enjoying Draupadi's distress, remembering how she had laughed at him in the Mayasabha. Draupadi buried her head in her hands and wept. Her husbands glared furiously at the insolent Duryodhana, but still the Kuru elders remained silent. Finally, Dhritarashtra's son Vikarna spoke out. O kings, answer Draupadi's question. If we do not decide a matter referred to us in the royal assembly, then we shall descend into hell. Dhritarashtra, Bhishma, Vidur, you are the elders of the Kurus, yet you do not say anything. Why are Drona and Kripa silent? Let the kings who have assembled here from all directions leave aside their anger and give Draupadi a reply. Vikarna looked around the assembly, but still no one spoke. He repeatedly asked that Draupadi's question be answered. Had she been won or not? Was she now the Kaurava's slave? The silence in the great hall was broken only by Draupadi's sobs. After another agonizing minute had passed, Vikarna said, If no one will respond, then I shall say what I consider just and proper, O best of men. It is said that there are 4 vices to which kings are prone: hunting, drinking, womanizing, and gambling. The man addicted to these vices lives by forsaking virtue. Therefore, that which is performed by one under the sway of any of these sins cannot be taken seriously. Badly under the influence of gambling and urged on by the sinful Shakuni, Yudhishthir staked this princess. She belongs to all the Pandavas and was lost after Yudhishthir had already lost himself. Nor was Yudhishthir playing the game willingly. Rather, the king invited him here to oblige him to play an unfair match. Considering all this, I say that Draupadi has not been won. As Vikarna sat down, the assembly was in an uproar. Practically everyone applauded him and censured Shakuni. Karna at once leaped up and waved his arms about to silence, like that, silence the assembly. His angry voice boomed, O Vikarna, I have observed many improper things in this assembly, and your words are an example of one of them. Like fire springing from a log, your anger will simply consume you. All the great personalities among the Kurus are silent. Obviously, this means they consider Drupada's daughter fairly won. You are immature. Therefore, you rail in anger even though you do not know the laws of morality and speak like a fool. Yudhishthir has staked her as a fair bet and lost. Karna, like Duryodhana, still remembered his humiliation when Draupadi refused to allow him to compete in her Swayamvar. The pain of that refusal still rankled. Well, he thought, the proud princess is now getting what she deserves. He turned to the assembly and argued that there was no sin in bringing Draupadi into the hall in her present state. After all, she had already accepted 5 husbands. What kind of moral woman was she? In his opinion, she was unchaste. He pointed to Draupadi as he spoke. For such a woman, there is nothing wrong even if she is brought naked into an assembly. Indeed, she now belongs to the Kauravas and must obey our command. O Dushasana, why not take off her robes and remove also the Pandavas' royal dress too? They are no longer kings. Bound by morality, the Pandavas slowly removed their upper garments and threw them down. They sat silently as Dushasana approached the wailing Draupadi. The Kaurava took hold of the end of her cloth and pulled on it forcefully. Draupadi held her sari tightly in an attempt to protect herself, but it was useless. Her strength was nothing compared to Dushasana's. She looked again at her 5 husbands. It was obvious that they could not help her. As Dushasana pulled harder, she looked around the hall like a frightened deer assailed by a lion. There was only one person now who could save her, Krsna. The Supreme Personality saw everything and was always her shelter. Draupadi fixed her mind on Krishna, threw her hands and cried, O Govinda, O Keshava, O beloved of the gopis and Lord of Vrindavan, O Janardhan, you are the destroyer of all affliction. I am sinking into the Kuru ocean. O Lord, O soul of the universe, O creator of the world, save me who am distressed and losing my senses in this evil assembly. From where he was seated in Dwaraka, Krishna heard Draupadi's piteous cries. He expanded himself by his inconceivable power and went swiftly to Hastinapur. By his mystic potency, he immediately entered the assembly hall. Without being seen by anyone, he provided Draupadi with an unlimited supply of cloth to cover her. Dushashana pulled and pulled at her sari, and as he did so, the princess spun around, but he could not disrobe her. There seemed to be no end to her sari. The astonished prince pulled with even more strength, but Draupadi remained covered. Soon, a large heap of cloth lay piled on the floor. Seeing this wonderful event, all the kings praised Draupadi and censured Dushasana. The prince was exhausted from his futile attempt to undress the Pandava's wife. He sat down, perspiring heavily. Bhima leaped up and raised his arms. "O kings of the world," he thundered, "listen to my words. I shall now make a vow unlike any that has been made before, nor shall such a vow be made in future. If I do not forcefully tear open the breast of this sinful wretch on the battlefield and drink his blood, then may I not obtain the path of my ancestors." Hearing Bhima's terrible words, the kings applauded him and again censured Dushasana. A clamor arose. Shouts of "Shame, shame" filled the hall. Vidura once more brought silence to the hall. He turned to Dhrtarastra and Bhishma. "O learned men, you do not answer Draupadi's question, and thus in this assembly we persecute religion. A distressed person comes to an assembly of good men like a man feeling the heat of a blazing fire. The assembly should extinguish his fire and cool him with truth and morality. The distressed man asks about his rights according to morality, and he is entitled to an answer. O king, Vikarna has offered one answer to Draupadi's question according to his own knowledge and judgment. Now you should also reply." Bhishma, Drona, and Kripa looked expectantly at Dhritarashtra. They were unable to tolerate any more from Duryodhana. Still, the blind king maintained his silence. Vidur continued, "One who knows the rules of morality, yet sits in an assembly without properly answering a question, receives a sinful reaction. Listen as I recount the ancient history of Prahlad and the son of a rishi named Angirasa." Vidur described how Prahlad's son Virochana had once quarreled with a rishi named Sudhanva for the sake of a bride. They both had gone to Prahlad and asked, "Which of us is superior? Answer us truthfully." Prahlad looked at both of them but said nothing. Sudhanva became angry and said, "If you do not answer, or if you answer falsely, then your head will break into 100 pieces." Trembling with fear, Prahlad then consulted the celestial sage Kashyapa. "O exalted one, tell me, what regions are obtained by one who, being asked a question, does not reply or answers falsely?" Kashyapa said, "He who knows but does not answer out of temptation, anger, or fear is bound by Varuna's 1,000 nooses. He who is called as witness but who speaks falsely is similarly punished. After 1 full year, one of the nooses is loosened." How many nooses? 1,000 nooses. So after 1 year, one noose is loosened. Therefore, one should speak the truth as he knows it. If virtue pierced by sin goes to an assembly, it is the duty of every man there to remove that dart. If they fail to do so, then they will be pierced by that same dart. In an assembly where a censurable act is not rebuked, every member of that assembly is afflicted by sin. Grief will overcome them all in due course. After hearing Kashyapa's words, Prahlad said to his son, "Sudhanva is undoubtedly your superior as much as his father Angirasa is mine." Sudhanva immediately blessed Prahlad. "As you have spoken the truth, without being moved by affection for your son, may he live for 100 years. Vidur concluded, hearing this great instruction about religion, let all those present deliberate on what should be done. Draupadi should be given an answer. Still there was silence in the hall. Seeing the Kuru elders saying nothing and considering this tacit approval of her condition, Karna spoke to Dushasana. Take the servant woman to the inner apartments. Dushasana again grabbed Draupadi's hair and began to drag the helpless princess, who was trembling and crying piteously, to her husband's. Pulling herself free from his grasp, she addressed the assembly in tearful words. Wait a little, O worst of men. I have not as yet offered my respects to my superiors. Forgive me. It was not my fault, as I was forcibly dragged here by this low wretch, this disgrace of the Kurus. The morality of the Kuru house has been lost forever today. Never before have we heard of a married woman being brought in this state before an assembly. She who was never before even seen, even by the wind or the sun, has now been exposed before all men. Indeed, I am being publicly persecuted by wicked men. Dhrtarastra listened with his head bowed as she went on. What could be more distressing for me than that? Although I am high born and chaste, the Pandava's wife and Krishna's friend, I am nevertheless dragged into this assembly. Where is the religion of all these kings? O Kauravas, answer me truthfully. Am I, Dharmaraja's lawful wife, born in the same order to which he belongs, to be considered a servant woman or not? I shall be obedient to your command. O Kurus, this despicable destroyer of Kuru fame is cruelly dragging me. I cannot tolerate it any longer. Tell me what I should do, and I will happily obey you. Bhishma shed tears as Draupadi spoke. He looked at her with compassion and said, O blessed lady, I have said that the ways of religion are subtle. Even wise men find it hard to understand them. Sometimes what a great and powerful man calls religion is accepted as such, even though it may not normally be so. What a weak man says, no matter how moral it may seem, is generally disregarded. From the importance of the matter you have raised, its intricacy and subtlety, I find myself unable to answer you. Bhishma stopped and looked around at the silent assembly. Turning back to Draupadi, he continued, It is certain that as the Kurus have become slaves of greed and folly, our race will soon be destroyed. O Panchali, that even under today's circumstances you would turn to religion shows how worthy you are and adds glory to our house. Your husbands are equally praiseworthy. They do not deviate from virtue in such difficulty. The Kauravas, however, sit with downcast faces. They look as if they are dead. I do not think they are going to answer you. You should ask your question of Yudhisthira. He alone should say whether or not you have been won. Draupadi wept like a female osprey. Still the kings remained silent. They appeared to be afraid of Duryodhana's power. The Kaurava prince continued to smile, even after hearing Bhishma's words. Rising, he said to Draupadi, O Panchali, I agree with Bhishma. The answer to your question depends upon your husband. Let the illustrious Yudhisthira, resembling Indra himself and ever devoted to virtue, state whether or not he acted rightly. If he declares himself to have gambled you away falsely because he was no longer your lord at the time, I shall free you. I will also free his brothers if he makes the same declaration about them. Let Yudhishthir tell us first, however, that he lost his discrimination. After Yudhishthir has spoken, O thin-waisted lady, then you should accept either ourselves or the Pandavas as your lords. All the Kurus here are floating in the sea of your affliction. They are naturally magnanimous. Therefore, looking at your unfortunate husbands, they are unable to answer your question. Again the assembly erupted. Many kings applauded Duryodhana's words. Others cried out, Alas and oh! But each now turned to look at Yudhishthir, eager to hear what he would reply. As the hum of voices gradually died down, Bhima stood suddenly. His voice filled the hall. If the high-souled Dharmaraj were not our Lord and Guru, then we would not pardon the Kuru race. But he is the Lord of all our religious and ascetic merits. Indeed, he is the Lord of our lives. If he considers us one, then we are one. If it were not so, then who is there among mortal creatures on this earth who could escape with their life after touching the hair of the Panchala princess? Look at my two arms. They are maces of steel. Having come within their grasp, who could escape? Not even Indra himself, bound by the ties of virtue and by the reverence due our elder brother. And because I am being repeatedly urged by Arjun to remain silent, I do nothing. If but once commanded by Yudhisthira, I would, by means of my slaps alone, kill Dhrtarashtra's sinful sons as a lion kills a flock of small animals. Hearing Bhima speak, Bhishma, Drona, and Vidur said with alarm, "Be peaceful, O Bhima, anything is possible for you." Karna then jumped up from his seat. "It seems that Khatwa, Bhishma, and Drona are independent," he exclaimed, his face red with anger. "They always censure their master and never wish for his prosperity. I shall say what is right in this case. The slave, the son, and the wife are always dependent. Whatever they possess belongs to their master. O Draupadi, you are the wife of a slave who is now incapable of possessing anything of his own. Go then to the king's inner quarters and serve his relatives. Select another husband who will not lose you at gambling. Your husbands are all slaves and cannot be your masters any longer." Obviously, Yudhishthir considers that life and manhood are useless, as he has offered Draupadi's daughter as a stake in the presence of this assembly. Bhima glowered at Karna, breathing heavily. It seemed he was about to leap forward at any moment. Still, he remained obedient to Yudhishthir. Bound by virtue, he did nothing. Looking around as if to burn everything with his blazing eyes, he turned to Yudhishthir and said, "My lord, I cannot become angry at the words of the Suta's son, since we are now slaves. O king, could our enemies ever have spoken in this way in my presence if you had not staked this princess?" Yudhishthir sat silently, stunned. Duryodhana laughed and said, "Come, O king, tell us the truth. Is Draupadi one or not?" Reveling in his cousin's anguish, Duryodhana smiled at Karna. To further insult and incite Bhima, the Kaurava prince then uncovered his right thigh, which resembled the trunk of an elephant, and showed it to Draupadi. "Sit here upon the lap of your new lord, O princess. What have you to do with the Pandavas now?" Bhima could take no more. He exploded. "Hear this, you wretch! If I do not break that thigh in battle, then let me not attain the regions of my ancestors." Fire was emanating from every part of Bhima's body as he spoke, and his heavy chest rose and fell like the ocean. Vidur jumped up and addressed the assembly. "O kings, observe the danger we are now in from Bhima. A calamity threatens to overtake our race. This has been sent by destiny. Dhritarashtra's sons have gambled deceitfully. Now they are quarreling over a woman. This kingdom's prosperity is at an end. Alas, the Kurus have given way to iniquity. This entire assembly is now polluted by sin. O kings, take to heart the precept I shall declare. Having first lost himself, Yudhishthir was unable to lose Panchali. She cannot be considered a slave." This is Vidurji's conclusion. Duryodhana looked at the agonized Pandavas. "I am willing to abide by the decision of Bhima, Arjun, and the twins. Let them declare that Yudhishthir is no longer their master, and I will free Draupadi." Arjun retorted, "Yudhishthir was certainly our lord and master before he began to play. Having lost himself, let the Kurus decide whose master he is now. As Arjun spoke, a jackal suddenly cried out in Dhritarashtra's nearby sacrificial chamber. Asses brayed in response, and fearful birds cried in all quarters of the sky. Seized by anxiety, Bhishma and Drona cried out, "All peace!" Vidur urged the king to do something before total disaster overtook them. Dhritarashtra at last accepted that things had gone too far. He had remained silent long enough. Raising his hand, he silenced the assembly, which was in chaos because of the evil omens. The blind king said, "O wicked-minded Duryodhana, O wretch, you are already as good as dead now that you have insulted a wife of the Kuru chiefs in this way, especially the Pandavas' wife Draupadi." Dhritarashtra knew that they now faced grave danger. If he did not appease the Pandavas, then united with the invincible Krsna, they would wreak a terrible vengeance upon the Kauravas. The king attempted to console Draupadi. "O Panchali, please ask from me any favor you may desire. Chaste and always devoted to virtue, you are the foremost of all my daughters-in-law." Draupadi looked up at Dhritarashtra, who had said nothing while she was being persecuted. She knew he had relented only out of fear. Still, this was her opportunity to rectify the situation. She bowed before the king and said, "O best of the Bharata race, if you desire to do me good, then let Yudhisthira be freed from slavery. He is the father of my son, Prativindya. Let not people speak of that boy, born and raised as a royal prince, as if he were the son of a slave." Dhritarashtra replied, "O blessed girl, it shall be so. Ask for another favor. I am not satisfied by giving you only one boon. Then also free Bhima, Arjun, and the twins, along with their chariots and weapons." Dhritarashtra again granted the favor without hesitation. Then he asked Draupadi to request a third boon. This time the princess said, "O king, greed destroys virtue. I dare not ask a third favor. Indeed, the scriptures ordain that a Kshatriya woman may ask no more than two boons. My husbands, being freed from slavery, will be able to obtain prosperity by their own virtuous acts." Karna broke out laughing. "Just see how these great heroes have been saved by a woman. When they were sinking in a boatless ocean of distress, this beautiful princess became the boat of their salvation. I have never heard of such a thing before today." Bhima flared, but again Arjun checked him. "Desist, brother. Great men never care for the harsh words uttered by inferior men. Even if able to retaliate, they do not take seriously acts of hostility, preferring instead to remember even a little good that their enemies may have done them." Bhima was hardly pacified by Arjun's words. He spoke in a low voice to Yudhishthir. "I shall at once kill all these foes. What need is there for further discussion? O Lord, you may then rule the earth without a rival." Bhima repeatedly cast angry glances at the Kauravas, even as a lion looks at a herd of small animals. Arjun restrained him with appealing looks, placing his hand on his brother's heaving shoulder. Smoke, sparks, and flames, I mean, literally. Smoke, sparks, and flames issued from Bhima's ears, mouth, and nostrils as he fought to restrain himself. With his furrowed brows and red eyes, he appeared like Yamaraj at the time of universal destruction. Yudhishthir embraced him and said, "Be peaceful, brother." He then turned to Dhritarashtra. "O king, you are our lord. Command us what we should do now." Dhritarashtra replied, "Go in peace, Ajatashatru. You are full of humility and you wait upon your elders. Therefore you are wise. Those who are wise do not remember an enemy's hostility. Instead, they see only the good in them. Only the worst of men use harsh words in a quarrel, while superior men do not react when provoked. Knowing their own feelings, they can understand the feelings of others. Therefore, they always act with compassion, even toward their enemies." Dhritarashtra then begged Yudhishthira to forget Duryodhana's harshness and to try instead to remember whatever kindness the king and his wife Gandhari had shown him. He told Yudhisthira that he had allowed the gambling match in order to examine the strengths and weaknesses of his children and the Pandavas. The king concluded, "In you, O Yudhishthir, is virtue, in Bhima prowess, in Arjun patience, and in the twins there is pure reverence for and service towards superiors. Go then, all of you, and live in peace. Return to your own kingdom. Let there be brotherly love between yourselves and my sons. Be ever fixed in virtue." The Pandavas bowed before the king and then left. They ascended their chariots with Draupadi and started for Indraprastha. The assembly broke up, and all the kings retired to the palatial mansions provided for them by Dhrtarastra. As they left the hall, some of them praised Yudhishthir and others Duryodhana. The blind king was led away by Vidura. As he recalled the heinous wrong committed by his sons toward the Pandavas, and especially toward their wife, he became gripped by fear. Giving them their property could hardly repair the damage that was done by the insult to Draupadi. Bhima would certainly never forget his vows, and at the first opportunity would doubtlessly take his revenge. Sighing, the Kuru monarch entered his chambers and began his evening prayers. Does Dhritarashtra actually say that he's returning the kingdom also? He says, "Go in peace." Yeah, he doesn't say anything about returning the kingdom, right? And Draupadi said, "Just release my husbands." Acha. See, when he said ask for a third, so first she said release Yudhishthir, then she said release the other four along with their weapons and chariots. That's all. So he said ask for a third, and she said no, I cannot ask for more than two. And just Bhima is speaking. Then Dhritarashtra said, "Go in peace, Ajatashatru. You are full of humility." And he said, "I just arranged this whole thing to see the strength and weakness of my sons and you." Yeah, he never said that I'm returning whatever you have lost in the gambling, I'm giving it all back to you. At least here it's not written. He said, forget Duryodhana's harshness, try to remember the good that the king and his wife did. Go then, all of you, and live in peace. Return to your kingdom. Okay, here. So he's saying, return to your kingdom. So he return to your kingdom, let there be brotherly love. So, yeah, go back and everything is yours. I mean, when he says return to your kingdom, I think that's what it means. And the Pandavas bowed and left, ascended their chariots, and Draupadi, they went back to Indraprastha. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's 11:45 almost, and I don't think we have time to read another full chapter today. So we'll stop here. It was a big chapter. So we'll read tomorrow. The Pandavas exiled, so there will be another gambling match. So we'll read that tomorrow. Hare Krishna, everyone. Does anyone have any comments, questions? No. Okay.